Well, we're back just in time for one of the best times of the tennis year. Of course, it is the 2021 Australian Open Draw Show. Welcome here. Very excited to get the tennis year started with one of my favorite tournaments of the entire year, the Happy Slam, as Roger Federer coined it many years ago. Now, one of the things I'm hearing at this year's Australian Open is that there is going to be several surprises at this tournament, and that's because of the nature of the quarantine. Many of the players have had to go through. Some players are allowed to go practice up to 5 hours a day, then go to their isolation area, their hotel room, whatever. And other players have had a lot less time to get out and get ready for this tournament. We've heard some players talk about how they're worried that they'll get injured playing at the Australian Open. I mean, we know going back to last year, right after Rafa won the French Open, they were asking Rafa how he felt about the Australian Open. And he said, you know, the way they're talking about doing it right now, where players are going to be sitting around for 2 weeks doing nothing, that sounds like you're going to get injury, and that could be very dangerous for your career. So it looks like some players have actually had to go through that while others have not. But we'll get to all that in the show. The point was that this could be a tournament of surprises. It's going to come down to who's had the most matches, who's somewhere the closest to their level of Grand Slam, ready for best of 5 sets level of fitness. Who is closest to that? So as we go through the draw today, we'll definitely talk about that. Another thing we're hearing is that Djokovic, that this could be it for him. His dominance might be over at the Australian Open. I've even heard people say, like, oh, because they lost to Germany yesterday, Serbia lost to Germany. Djokovic beat Sasha Zverev despite dropping the first set. It was a pretty impressive win, actually, because Zverev was playing well. Djokovic was his usual self in Melbourne. Because they lose in the doubles, some people are saying this is like some kind of weakness because Djokovic didn't win a doubles match. Remember, this is prep for the big show, the Australian Open, and because Djokovic is facing a lot of big servers, even though we'll talk about in a minute, this court is playing a little faster than last year and taking to the slice serve, especially while it's a little slick, they're saying. Because of those things, some people see danger lurking ahead for Novak Djokovic. I'll tell you, the Djokovic fans, right now, I'm not too worried. Even with the big serves coming in faster on this fast court, I'm not going to put much in today's video. We haven't done a video in a while. Don't want to get in trouble with the ATP like we always do. But take a look at what, just because your serve is more effective on a fast court, it doesn't mean the greatest returner of all time can't do this with it.
Wow.
Djokovic fans, don't worry. I'm not too worried about Novak. I think there's a really good chance that he wins the Australian Open, which starts Monday. Can you believe that? It's coming up real fast. The other big thing, though, Rafa Nadal. He hasn't played ATP Cup at all. Remember last year he played a lot. He's playing singles and doubles all the time. And a lot of people felt like that led to his loss to Dominic Thiem in, the quarterfinals, I believe, at last year's Australian Open. This year, Nadal hasn't played anything, which is leading people to speculate that Nadal won't even be able to play the Australian Open because of a lower back injury. He really is not calling it an injury. They're really talking about it like it's just a feeling of stiffness. It's minor. We'll dive into that. We'll dive into all of that stuff on today's first edition in a while and first edition of Coffee Break Tennis in 2021. Today on Coffee Break Tennis, of course, we're going through the 2021 Australian Open draw. This is the draw show. We'll talk about Rafa Nadal's back, of course. Roger Federer, not here. Many people might think that it's because of the knee issues. He had a couple surgeries on his knee last year. But about a month ago, there were some stories, in fact, a pretty reliable source, I would say, saying there's a very different reason why Roger is not down under. We'll talk about that in case you missed it about a month ago. Denis Shapovalov, El Chapo, rapper, drug cartel guy, and of course tennis player from Canada, is playing Jannik Sinner. If you watched the show in the last about half year or so, you know I'm pretty big on Jannik Sinner. Starting to lean on him as my future of the sport guy. They're playing in the first round at the Australian Open. There's a few notable first round matchups. We'll take a look at that. And then we got a pretty big story here. Guido Pella, Viktor Troicki, compatriot of Novak Djokovic from Serbia. Those two have given us a look inside what the quarantine is like. They're on the bad end of it, let's just say, and they gave us a pretty candid view of how bad it can get. I think Viktor Troicki called it a horror show. Also, we've got Riley Opelka with some of the same stuff, and then Leighton Hewitt, he kind of sums it up for me. Leighton Hewitt gives us a general view of of why people think this will be a tournament of surprises, and a lot of talk, a lot of hope from Leighton Hewitt on Nick Kyrgios. Now, I've watched all 3 of Nick Kyrgios' matches in Australia so far. Those first 2 matches, a lot of reason to be big on Nick Kyrgios, but let's just start with this. Take a look at this. That third match against Borna Coric, which Kyrgios lost, I think, in like a little less than an hour. The knee is clearly not right with Nick Kyrgios. Is it going to be good in a few days' time? I don't know about that. All that and nothing more in today's edition of Coffee Break Tennis. Also, let's do a little bit of catching up. I have been gone for a while, so let me tell you about where I've been. So going back to the ATP World Tour Finals, I got the COVID. A lot of people in the southeastern region where I live, can't remember what side it's on, east or west. A lot of people call it the COVID now. They don't say COVID-19, they just say the COVID. So I've been saying that. And I got it back around the time of the World Tour Finals. This was my positive test result. When I went and got tested, I probably should have seen it as a warning sign when the people who did the testing came to me with my result and gave it to me like that. And then kind of jump backwards like that. I should have known, but then I went back a couple weeks later and I was negative. If you're curious about the COVID, I'll tell you, I'm a pretty healthy guy. I did have lingering effects like you hear. I did notice my breathing wasn't the same, but within a month of getting it, I think all that stuff was pretty much gone. Any lingering effects. I did get back on the tennis court pretty quickly. I got an Instant Pot. That is something I did since the last time I saw you. I have this cookbook. And it's a good cookbook. I've been cooking all my food instead of buying any food from restaurants and no fast food, or at least very little. And that's helped me lose weight so I can be more healthy on the tennis court where I'm doing this. A lot of exercises in this book to work on my tennis fitness, something Nick Kyrgios should have been doing last year. I don't know if he did as much as even I did since November. This is from the great Mark Kovacs, who does a lot of great videos for Tennis Con, presented by Peter Freeman's Crunch Time Coaching. Of course, I got my hands on a Uniqlo RF hat, even though they sold out on my first try before I could buy it. And I read Jenkins on Churchill. So keeping very busy here. Oh, I got a refrigerator backpack so that I can have 2 bags when I walk on the court like Roger Federer. And so I can keep water and protein bars, all that kind of stuff. That is what I've been up to. Been playing a ton of tennis. I guarantee if you're watching this, high likelihood I could beat you in a singles match, especially best out of 5, because I have, if I didn't mention, been working on my tennis fitness. So let's dive right into the draw. Put it on the screen with my horrible handwriting. If you're doing some kind of a gambling or draw predictions contest where you win a prize, feel free to copy my picks. I have put question marks by the ones that I don't feel comfortable telling you a pick to make, or simply players I haven't had time to watch. There's been a good bit of tennis in the last couple weeks, so I have had a good look at a lot of players, and I'll let you know as we go through the draw show. So first up, we got Novak Djokovic's section of the draw. I'll walk you through who he's seeded to face. Put that up on the screen. Jeremy Chardy, this court, like I said, it's playing faster. In fact, let's just address the court speeds right now. I've watched enough tennis and heard enough expert commentators, fellers like Jim Courier, people like that, plenty of people, different players, former players from the ATP Tennis TV crew, and all of them are saying this court is playing fast, it looks faster, or they've heard from the players that it's playing faster, or they're a hitting partner, or they're coaching someone who's hitting with players on the outdoor courts, which are, as usual, faster than the indoor courts, the stadium courts. So we're hearing that the courts are very fast. We're also hearing that the courts are taking to the slice better, right? It's a more slick surface. Roger Federer has got to be feeling, especially as we get deeper in this tournament and he sees how this court is playing, I would imagine Federer is really feeling bad he missed out on this year's Australian Open. And I've even heard from, I can't remember who, but one tennis TV commentator was saying that the balls, remember last year's Dunlop tennis balls, well, a lot of people were worried for Federer because, yeah, the court is fast at the Australian Open. It's a good court for Roger Federer, but the balls were not so good. Everyone was saying how they are fluffing up and they are slowing down. I heard one commentator say that even the balls are playing a lot faster this year at the Australian Open. So maybe the balls are a little bit different. Like I said, I only heard that from one source, but several sources are saying the court's playing faster, especially when the weather's hot and the conditions are right. It's playing lightning fast, and it's taking to the slice. So a big advantage for servers. I wanted to touch base on one thing because you hear this all the time. You hear, oh, it's clay, it's slow, advantage to the big server. Why? Because the big server can still hit an ace. Someone with a weaker serve can't hit an ace on a super slow surface. Then you hear, oh, the courts are playing very fast, advantage to the servers. But you can make a case that it's an advantage to the weaker servers because now if you have good placement but not a lot of power, it's easier to hit an ace on a fast court in fast conditions. But of course, if you have a big serve, well, it's extremely easy to hit an ace, and maybe you can not rev it up as fast as you usually would hit your big serve if you're like a Nick Kyrgios. You can take a little speed off and save your shoulder for a best of 5 sets match. So depends how you're looking at it, and really it always comes down to matchups, individual matchups, one player's style against another player's when we're talking singles tennis. So let's go back into the draw with all of that said, and now that we know where we stand with this these tennis courts and the conditions in Australia. So Novak Djokovic, they got him facing Jeremy Chardy, France's Tiafoe, Taylor Fritz, or Riley Opelka. All those guys can hit a lot of big power. Stan Wawrinka, Milos Raonic, Sasha Zverev in the quarterfinal, and then Dominic Thiem would be the semifinal opponent of Novak Djokovic. Now, Sasha Zverev, we just saw him play against Djokovic yesterday. He was serving well. It was hard for Djokovic to get into his service games. Of course, what is the one thing that Sasha Zverev does, even though he didn't do it a ton, but he did it enough to open the door just a little bit for Djokovic to take advantage. Of course, that's double faults. Double faults came at some bad times for Sasha Zverev. That definitely helped Djokovic. If Sasha Zverev can get better and better, like we've seen him do, like he did at the U.S. Open last year, if he can get better and better and hit less and less double faults as he gets, further into the tournament, he's four matches under his belt, best of 5 by the time he gets to a quarterfinal, if this happens, as he's projected to do, and face Novak Djokovic. Maybe that won't be so much of an issue. Maybe you won't see any double faults, or you'll only see a couple and some bad moments for Sasha. Of course, that's probably going to mean Djokovic beats him. Dominic Thiem, the semifinal projection for Novak Djokovic. He's had a bad start here, but I want to remind you the ATP Cup last year for Dominic Thiem was not good at all. He had a couple losses, one win. I think he did the exact same thing here. Who did he beat? Did he beat Benoit Paire in a match that wasn't finished? He's like, okay, well, it's Benoit Paire. But that might also have something to do with, think of someone who works a little harder than Benoit Paire, and Pablo Carreno Busta. He had to withdraw from the doubles. A lot of players, depending on their quarantine situation and how fast they're able to find their full tennis fitness right now, might be retiring from these matches, going down early because of those kind of issues that would come from not getting the appropriate level of fitness for this tournament. That could be the case. It also could be the case, and what I suppose is what's happening with Rafa Nadal, is that, there's a slight injury here. Probably could play through it. Why do that for ATP Cup? We're starting the Australian Open in literally a couple of days. So Dominic Thiem, rough start. What did he do last year? Same thing. Then he goes to the finals and almost beats Djokovic. So I'm not going to count Dominic Thiem out because of that. Fritz and Riley Opelka, it could be dangerous on this court, but again, Djokovic, best returner in the world. I like Djokovic to get through to these semifinals. I have him going past Zverev, Raonic, Opelka I have instead of Fritz, but it could easily go either way with those two. Let's go down to the section below. This is a Dominic Thiem section, and Schwarty D on the bottom underneath Dominic Thiem. Going through Kukushkin, that should be a pretty doable match. Dominic Thiem said he wasn't happy about playing Berrettini in his first match up. And this court is playing well for someone like Berrettini. Berrettini did a great job in that match of just getting a lot of big serves in and hitting first ball, first strike. You see it with Rafa all the time. Big serve, first ball is always a forehand. I think in that match against Dominic Thiem, I think Berrettini found his forehand over 80, close to 90% of the time after his first serve went in. It also, you would think Dominic Thiem would pick on the Berrettini backhand, that would be a better matchup, but it almost looked like Berrettini was hitting the backhand better than Dominic Thiem. He looked all out of sorts, but again, I don't expect that to be a big deal going forwards. He'll like playing Mikhail Kukushkin up first better. I got him playing Dominik Koepfer, fellow German speaker. this is a good little start. But then we run into what a lot of people have saying, Nick Kyrgios unseeded. Where could he be? Yeah, a lot of people I'm sure had their fingers crossed that Nick Kyrgios would be first round opponent of Novak Djokovic or Rafa Nadal, something like that. But instead, Nick Kyrgios has a qualifier that I've never even heard of called Frederico Ferreira Silva from Portugal. So good start for Kyrgios. We played earlier the thing with Kyrgios' knee. Kyrgios' knee is not 100%, obviously. Can he get it healthy in time to play Federico? I sure hope so, because if he gets through, if Kyrgios is to get through, he could likely play Ugo Humbert, which would be a tough match. But if Kyrgios is feeling better and playing near his best, like I said, seen a lot of good stuff from Nick Kyrgios in his 3 matches back. The off-speed stuff, the tricky shots, the underhand serves. He's really kind of mastered the formula of when to underhand serve, when to fake. I mean, take a look at this. This is pretty cool. He does the fake and then rushes the fast first serve in and bamboozles Borna Coric, as you can see, pretty good. That kind of thing makes you uncomfortable. The problem with that was because of the knee, he couldn't push off. He was hitting serves literally in 70, 75, 76 mile an hour serves from Nick Kyrgios. First serves were almost all of them under 100 miles an hour. Some first serves were coming in at like 80 something. So clearly Nick Kyrgios couldn't push off. If he would have had that, if you have the fastball, the heater to throw in, and then you can do all this crazy stuff too. If you can run around and stay in a rally and hit big forehands and backhands and then throw in off-speed stuff, I think Kyrgios maybe beats Borna Coric. So seeing him go down in straight sets, I think there's still reason to fear Kyrgios. Dominic Thiem could play Kyrgios in the 3rd round. That would be a blockbuster. I mean, everyone would love to see that. Hopefully Kyrgios' knee can get healthy very quickly. Otherwise, none of that's going to matter. Then we got Grigor Dimitrov and Marin Cilic. Marin Cilic almost won it. He was the finalist in 2018, the last time Federer won a major. I think that was when Federer wore this shirt. Or maybe it was 2019. Grigor Dimitrov almost beat Rafa in the semifinals 2017. Thank God he didn't, because we got one of the greatest matches of all time in the final in 2017. Those guys playing each other. It's a must-see TV first-round matchup. I guess we're not going to have to go through my list of must-see first-round matches, because we're going to do it as we go through this entire draw. I put a question mark there. That's a tough one to pick. Neither one of them are playing great right now. Neither one of them have had awesome results recently, but they're going to face off. Someone will win. If I had to go ahead with someone because of the fast surface, I'll just take Cilic. But again, you can make a case that Dimitrov's serve, if he's hitting good serves and he's placing it, the speed of the court is going to help him a lot. So maybe Dimitrov, but if I had to pick, I'll just go with Cilic. Bolt and Gombos, Norbert Gombos, I'll take Bolt there. I like Cilic or Dimitrov, though, to be in that 3rd round against. This is a tough one to pick. How is Pablo Carreno Busta? How is he feeling after he had to withdraw from doubles? I'm thinking it's a precaution, kind of like with Rafa's. My opinion there as well. They're just being careful because they value the Australian Open more. Why wouldn't they? So it could be Busta there. Who knows? Maybe Kei Nishikori could come through there. But that's a really tough section to pick. No one really knows how these guys are feeling. If I had to pick someone, I'd go Busta to come through to the 4th round if he's able to get healthy in time. He's a professional. I think he's got a good shot. But don't be surprised to see Dimitrov or Cilic find it there. Jannik Sinner playing Denis Shapovalov. That's a must-see match. Shapo looked pretty good in his loss to Novak Djokovic. Had some great moments. I remember in 2019 at Miami, he lost to Roger Federer. El Chapo. And I remember him saying something like, I would love to have volleys like Federer one day. And I kind of laughed. I kind of made fun of him at the time. But I got to credit Chapo. Every time I see him play, especially when there's a break, it looks like he's always working on his volleys. His net game is getting better and better. So a lot of stuff to like about Shapovalov. I've been down on him in the past. I like Jannik Sinner better than any of the young talent right now. I like him to come through, especially if he can get a lead early, if he can win that first set, and if Shapo starts, throwing his racket around and screaming to his mother, complaining to his mom, I don't think he's going to overcome incredibly mentally tough Jannik Sinner. Jannik Sinner, a little bit like Rafa Nadal, in my opinion. To see a young guy so focused on his career and so mentally tough, I mean, no one came close to beating Rafa, including Djokovic, at the French Open, except Jannik Sinner. I know it was straight sets, but it was the closest. If you're a Rafa fan, that was the most nervous you get, worrying about Rafa losing during a match. Probably that match against Jannik Sinner in the quarterfinals last year. So I have him coming through. Bernard Tomic or Yuichi Sugita. don't put much faith in Tomic. And now that we know he has a influencer girlfriend or an Instagram model, yeah, you can count Tomic out. He's not winning here. Felix Auger-Aliassime, we got him looming in this section. I like a Sinner Felix third round match. Let's see, Benoit Paire. I'm going to go with Gerasimov because Benoit Paire just pulled out of that match with Thiem. Took major. Might as well put a question mark there. I haven't watched either of those players play yet this year. I took Del Bonis here because of he's got a pretty big serve. It's a fast court. I got Shorty D coming through there. I think it's a great match for Jannik Sinner to get to the fourth round. I think he could beat Diego Schwartzman. But, of course, that wouldn't be easy by any means. So what do we have shaping up in this top half of the draw? I like a Djokovic-Zverev quarterfinal and a Dominic Thiem Jannik Sinner quarterfinal with a Djokovic versus Sinner semifinal. Would love to see it. Would love to see Jannik Sinner keep challenging the big names in tennis like he did at the French Open. I don't know if he can get past Dominic Thiem if Dominic Thiem finds things. But as we all know, sometimes Thiem, he gets on a court, it's a little fast for him. You saw it with Berrettini. It felt like he was being rushed. He looked very frustrated, very annoyed. I think he was rushed by the speed of this court. Jannik Sinner hits the ball very big, has a lot of spin, a lot of margin for error, extremely mentally tough as we were just talking about. And he doesn't back down. He doesn't back down no matter how much he misses. He keeps going for his shots. A little Federer-like in that regard. You could also say the same for Rafa Nadal. So I could see Jannik Sinner beating Dominic Thiem here. But again, that's a long ways away, and Dominic Thiem, do not count him out. Let's go to the bottom half of the draw. I got Rublev coming right through to the fourth round. Now, we've got some potential, like in the middle of this little section here, right? Feli Lopez, Sam Querrey, Sonego. Maybe Sonego can play well on a fast court. Maybe he could come through. How are these guys feeling? I don't know. It doesn't really matter because I think Rublev is going to come through. He's looking good, and his forehand is going to be unstoppable on this fast court. Below that, you got Casper Ruud. I picked Jordan Thompson because of that advantage. If you're an Aussie, you didn't have to quarantine. You're already there in Australia. You're already practicing in Melbourne. That is a real advantage. We've heard from a lot of pundits and tennis experts out there about that factor. So I have him coming through Casper Ruud, even though he's a seeded player here. Then we got Tommy Paul. He's an explosive, powerful player. He could be dangerous here, and he's going up against the third most famous Georgian, Nicolas Basilashvili. Of course, he's third most famous after all of his, and it's kind of like the stuff with Sasha Zverev. Something I was happy to avoid after I shut things down for Coffee Break Tennis last year. I got the COVID. Figured let's not do any shows for the rest of the year. And I was happy to avoid talking about the allegations against Sasha Zverev. Obviously, the ATP didn't want to talk about it either, which I thought was kind of interesting in itself. But Basilashvili, he's gone through the same things. It's one of those he said, she said type things. Whose word do you choose? I'm sure the Zverev fans who really love him are gonna choose him and his version of events. But either way, the main point for me, because I like to focus on the tennis here, is that it's a very distracting thing. So Basilashvili, third most famous Georgian, behind, of course, Katya Bunyachishvili, my favorite piano player, Katya. And, of course, champion of the workers around the world, Josef Jugashvili, the most famous Georgian in history. After those two, you get Basilashvili, and he's had these same kind of issues Zverev's had. You better believe that wears on you mentally and hurts your game. I like him to come through Tommy Paul, though, here on the fast court with his big shots and maybe a little more under control. You know, you used to talk about Basilashvili can lose control of his shots. Well, Tommy Paul can do the same thing. So let's go with Basilashvili there. But it's kind of much ado about nothing because Jan-Lennard Struff or Roberto Bautista Agut, one of those guys will come through, and I believe Rublev will quickly dispatch with them as well. Although, I mean, those are tough players. You can't just hand that to Rublev right away, but that's who I like. He has been hot. He had one of the best 2020s of any player on tour. I have him coming through there. Below that, David Goffin. He lost to the young Spaniard with the Federer-like forehand. What is he? He's like 17. He was winning on tour at age 15. That guy, what is his name? Carlos Alcaraz. He took out David Goffin, but it was on such a tiny court, even though this was the top seed versus an exciting young player, Alcaraz. They didn't have it on tennis TV, so I couldn't watch it. I can't tell you exactly what happened in that match. I'm very curious. I wish I could have seen that match. That was a big win to take out in his first matchup, to take out the top seed. So where's David Goffin at if he's losing to the 17-year-old Alcaraz? I don't know. I put a question mark there by him. The Torpedo, Mikhail Torpegaard. versus Lloyd Harris. I'll take Lloyd Harris, but there might as well be a question mark too. I haven't watched either of those players this year yet. I picked David Goffin to come through there because he should, right? He should win there, but who knows where he's at, especially when we can't see that loss against Alcaraz. Hopefully he got it together since then. Mackie McDonald I have coming through Cecchinato, who's a clay court specialist, and this is the opposite of clay here. Guido Pella has admitted that the quarantine has ruined his chances of doing anything here, and Coric looked pretty good in the win over Kyrgios, so we'll take Coric. I'll take Coric coming through, but he's going to run into Medvedev. I got Flip Krajinovic. I'm calling him Flip now. It's easier than saying Flip. Flip Krajinovic will beat Robin Haase, the lucky loser. Pablo Andujar, a question mark over there. Baena I took over Balaz. I did watch a Balaz match, and it might have been Alcaraz beating him, actually, was the match. That was the one match you could see Alcaraz play, I believe. Pospisil and Medvedev. They've played before. Pospisil has given Medvedev some tough matches. That's another must-see TV first-round match. But, of course, I think Medvedev has a decent shot at winning this tournament. I think he has a decent shot at winning every hard court major, whether it's the U.S. Open or the Aussie Open that he goes to for quite some time. For years to come, he should be a favorite. So I have him coming through all these guys, Coric, Flip Krajinovic, and I have him coming through Rublev because remember what happened at the U.S. Open last year. Rublev will probably be, feeling kind of hopeless in that match. I'm thinking, what can I do to beat my fellow Russian here? So I like Medvedev to come through. Let's wrap this up. We got Tsitsipas. I took Kokkinakis. Take a look at some pictures I took. I watched Kokkinakis' first match back. This guy's very good, and he's had a lot of troubles. Remember, some Federer fans out there might remember the last time you saw him was beating Federer in 2018 in Miami. Kind of a shock win there. I think it was one of those wins where a loss for Federer where he won more points than his opponent who won the match. He looks like he beefed up. Look at his muscles. That's a good sign on the way back from all the injuries and problems that the Cockmeister Kokkinakis has had. Does he beat Steph Tsitsipas? No chance. So we got Tsitsipas coming through to the third round. Alcaraz, the young Spaniard with the Federer-like forehand. He's got some guy I've never heard of from the Nederland. That's Batic van den Zandschulper. I did see his name in some results earlier. Can't remember if he was winning or losing. But heck, if Alcaraz can beat David Goffin, let's take him. Let's take him. We hope he wins. He's an exciting guy. I don't think he beats Hurkacz, but if he were, he would play Steph Tsitsipas in the third round. Alcaraz, the 17-year-old super talent versus Tsitsipas. Really hope to see that match. Don't know if he'll get past Hubie Hurkacz. Khachanov will like this court and has a big match coming up later tonight against Jannik Sinner. So we got Khachanov, Berankis. I'll take Khachanov to come through. I got Berankis over Sumit Nagal, not to be confused with Rafa Nadal. We got a couple qualifiers there. Put a question mark. Pick at your own risk. Kevin Anderson. I like Berrettini a lot. He looked really good against Monfils. He was in big trouble and came back in that match. Completely dominated Dominic Thiem. I mean, Dominic Thiem had a hard time just making that match last a full hour. So Berrettini coming through. I got Berrettini over Khachanov. Khachanov more experience here, but Berrettini looks really good, and he looks like he's got his mind in the right place. He's ready. He's hungry for more. So I got Berrettini coming through, and I got Steph Tsitsipas, who looks great also if you've watched him play at ATP Cup. Got him coming through Berrettini, but that could be a pretty tough matchup there. Fabio Fognini, I got him over Herbert, even though he hasn't looked amazing, but he's had some wins. He's here. He's playing. Salvatore Caruso, I took over Laxinen, and Fognini will beat his fellow countryman Caruso. Demon and Tennis Sandgren. Sandgren in the news for smashing his tennis rackets, screaming, and he won this match, actually, and yelling, "I hate this sport!" Which, who hasn't done that? All of us tennis players have had that happen at some point in their career. So that's a must-see TV match. I'll go with Demon, just because he's an Aussie, and there's a little advantage for Aussies this year. I got Cuevas over Seppi. He's won more matches. It's that simple. Demon, I got coming over Fognini, but who knows? Fognini, you never know when he's going to show up and decide he wants to play his best stuff. We got Dirty Danny's looking good here over Cam Norrie. Question mark below that. If you had to pick, go with Ivashka. Michael Moen, Troitsky. I'll take Troitsky, even though he says that he has no fitness and he's been stuck in his room. But it doesn't really matter because Rafa is coming through there. Get Rafa Nadal over Dirty Dan, over Demon, even though Demon had a great match with Rafa last year. And I got Steph beating Rafa because Rafa hasn't been able to play any prep matches, because we don't know 100% where his body is at, and because Steph should feel like he's due. Steph should be at a point in his career where he thinks that he should be beating Rafa Nadal. In fact, I think he said something like that to press while in Australia. He said he set his sights on beating Rafa. Well, lucky him, he's in his section of the draw. So we got Steph, Medvedev, and Sinner, which is one of those picks where I kind of wish to see Sinner there, but he's playing well enough to where it's possible. That's your final four for this year's Australian Open, according to me, Mr. CBT. And I'm going to just say Djokovic wins it all. But Medvedev could beat him. Sinner, who knows? Steph Tsitsipas, he could beat him too. But just watching Djokovic, Shapo was throwing some of the best stuff he had. And the way Djokovic comes up with his best stuff, comes up with the key clutch returns in the moment to win that match. Does the same thing with Sasha Zverev, who's serving amazing. Right? They shut the roof. This was interesting. Put this on the screen. This shows the ball toss spread. As you know, if you see Federer, the spread is very tight. It's a matter of inches. Some other players with wild tosses. Steph Tsitsipas is one of them where the toss isn't always great. Sometimes their spread can be pretty big. So if you see this indoors when they close the roof at Melbourne, at Rod Laver Arena, you can see how the one spread is much tighter. That's when the roof is closed. You don't have to move it around because of the sun. You don't have to worry about wind. That is the advantage when they talk about, advantage big server, advantage someone with a serve weapon when they close the roof. Even though it'll slow conditions down a little, but it helps you keep putting the toss where you like to put it. If the sun is making you change your toss, you're probably not going to hit your best serve. So I thought that was an interesting illustration of the Zverev toss spread. So that is a good example, though. In that match, he was serving very well. Djokovic finds a way to come up with clutch returns, takes advantage of the double fault when it does come, even though for Zverev is a good serving day, not a lot. He could throw 20 double faults in sometimes in a match. He didn't do that at all. So I really like Djokovic as always, and I'm stunned to see that so many people think Djokovic is his time is up here. Okay, so this is straight from Craig Smiley-Tiley. And he claims Rafa Nadal is protecting his opportunity to win a slam. Let's just insert in there to pass Roger Federer in the Grand Slam record and be the new GOAT. Craig Tiley reveals during this update. I see Rafa every day. He practiced for 90 minutes today. Think about that. If his back is so messed up that he can't play at all, how's the guy practicing 90 minutes? Craig Tiley's got a point. Out of extra caution, Rafa chose not to play the ATP Cup. I'm sure he'll show up and support his team, but he's indicated he'll be ready for the Australian Open on Monday. He's protecting his opportunity to win a 21st Grand Slam singles title. He's tied with Roger on 20. Novak's only 3 behind. There's a race in the men's game to be the all-time leader or to be the GOAT. And then they say Rafa's received a favorable draw in the men's singles at this year's Australian Open and will be able to reach the final without playing Djokovic or Thiem, the finalists from last year. So I think Greg Smiley is right. I've also heard Jim Courier saying when you watch Rafa on the sidelines, watching his friends, his Spaniard friends from España during the ATP Cup, he's jumping up, he's clapping, getting back in the chair. I've had back injuries. I can tell you from tennis, that you don't easily get up and down out of the chair. Jim Courier was making that same point. If Rafa's back was really jacked up, you wouldn't see him getting out of the chair. You probably wouldn't even see him there. He probably wouldn't even show up to watch his teammates. And if he did, he'd be nursing that back and not a lot of getting up to clap for his fellow Spaniards. So good point there. And like Craig Smiley was saying, Rafa's protecting the chance. It's obvious. He learned last year. A lot of people felt like Rafa lost in the quarterfinals to Thiem because he played too much in the ATP Cup. So this year, Rafa plays none. I want to say 2017, when we have one of those epic finals, that was a year where Rafa skipped a lot of tune-up tournaments, a lot of stuff he was planning to play to get ready. He skipped it all to make sure he was 100%, and it worked out pretty well for him. He almost won that major and almost stopped Roger Federer from turning his career around, getting number 17. Let's move on to, with that said, though, I like Tsitsipas believing that he actually could beat Rafa this year, and we'll see. Rafa's protecting the back. How is it going to be after a few matches? We shall see. I think Rafa could kind of do like in 2018 where he protects the body by playing pretty aggressive on this fast court, especially against some lower-ranked players that he faced early on. Roger Federer skipping Australian Open after wife opposes quarantine plan, official says. This is from sportingnews.com. And like I said, this was about a month ago. I think January 8th was when this story first posted. So Andre Sa, this guy is the head of player liaison for Tennis Australia. So he's responsible for contacting tennis players, especially big names that you want to have at your tournament to market your tournament and sell tickets, right? He said Federer pulled out when it became apparent that his wife and children would be holed up in a hotel accommodation for 2 weeks. Some players can go out and practice for 5 hours a day. Mirka and the 4 kids would not be allowed to leave at all. They wouldn't get 5 minutes outside, as Guido Pella said. So I know some people might say this smacks of some privilege or something like that, something along those lines. But honestly, I understand from the Federer perspective. And the other thing they say in the story, I get it. Federer wouldn't want to put his family through that. I mean, Mirka probably would lose her mind. Federer's off practicing 5 hours a day. That's a bad position to be in as a husband and father for Roger Federer. I mean, think about it. Federer's going out, practicing for 5 hours, feeling the Australian sun, and then he comes back and Mirka's stuck in the room with the 4 kids, unable to go outside, going crazy. Let's say she might be a little hostile towards Roger Federer. So Roger's smart. He didn't want to put himself in a situation like that. That's a losing situation. That's a lose-lose, right? And then you got the other side of it. Well, why don't they stay home and Roger go by himself? So what did Mr. Sa say, the liaison to tennis players at Tennis Australia? He said the main reason was the quarantine. I talked to him, Roger, a month ago, and he had 2 options. He could come with his whole family and do the quarantine, or he could come alone. The problem is that Mirka and her children couldn't leave the room. They would have to stay 14 days in a tiny hotel room. The exception is only for the players. Yeah, not, as we just talked about, not going to work for Roger. He's a smart guy to avoid that situation. Or he could go out, train, and come back with the family, couldn't, blah, blah, blah. Okay, the other option would be for him to come alone. Only there would be at least 5 weeks away from family and children, at least. And then he quotes him, which I hope Roger isn't mad at the guy. I hope the guy didn't get in trouble for revealing what Roger might have actually said, but it does sound a little bit like something Roger, you could imagine him saying. He quotes Roger saying to him, Mr. Sa, the player liaison, as saying, dude, 39, 4 kids, 20 Grand Slams. I'm no longer at a stage to be away from my family for 5 weeks. How can you blame him? So I have seen some outlets report on this story as Roger Federer couldn't be bothered to quarantine with Mirka. Mirka, she's so demanding. She's awful. But I strongly disagree with that. And I don't blame Roger. Plus, you see all the stories with Djokovic, which unfortunately we don't get into that stuff today. Let's wrap it up and get out of here. I will say this story right here. Also, Leighton Hewitt basically saying, watch out for Nick Kyrgios floating around in the draw was the gist of that story. We're not going to get to that today, but we will get to these two because they kind of link to some of the heat Rafa and Djokovic have taken. Obviously, if you don't know, if you've been under a rock, a lot of players are quarantining. All the players are quarantining in smaller rooms with more restrictions. And then Djokovic and Nadal and Thiem too, they're getting like palaces to hang out at. Maybe palace is a stretch, but as Guido Pella said, I'm asking for 5 minutes. If some players get 5 hours, I'm stuck in here asking for 5 minutes of fresh air to get out of my tiny room, which is literally smaller than Novak Djokovic's balcony at the place he's staying at during his luxurious quarantine. And a lot of people gave Djokovic heat, like, how dare you? It's a kind of a bad look for the players. Sounds like Djokovic actually cared about these lower-ranked players and was kind of standing up for them. Of course, every time Djokovic tries to do something good, he, no good deed goes unpunished, especially when it comes to Novak Djokovic. But I think it's possible that Roger Federer, he sees all these kind of PR disasters looming, and he sees it as like, I don't want to put Mirka through that. I don't want to be away from my family for 5 weeks, and I don't want to get caught up in bad publicity like we've seen with Djokovic and Rafa and Thiem, and kind of makes Roger look smart to skip all that. And again, his main priority, if he's going to win a 21st major, he knows it's coming at Wimbledon, even though I think he could have, the fast courts and the super slick, taken the slice serve here. That would have been pretty nice for Roger. Anyways, let's get into Guido Pella, Victor Troicki talking about what a nightmare it has been for them, not in the palaces like Rafa, Dominic Thiem, and Novak Djokovic. The Adelaide bubble management has been a hoax, Pella says to Tennis World USA. This is from Russia Today, propaganda great propaganda site. It does not surprise me, as nothing bothers me anymore, but that's the way it is. Although I am not critical of Novak, far from it. So he's standing up for Novak, and that's why I'm pretty positive on Novak here, because I've heard a lot of players saying that no, Novak wasn't being unreasonable complaining about his quarantine. He was really looking out for the lower ranked players who are in pretty crappy conditions compared to the top players. He says, these are the players that sell tickets. They mobilize everything. They are the ones who generate business. In a normal situation, there's no problem with that. Great to hear that from Pella, that he understands the way this business works. He knows where his bread is buttered, as they say. Novak has shown on many occasions that he has intentions and is involved for the common good. He fought against the Adelaide bubble since he found out that they put him there. The inaction from other top seeds, talking about Rafa and Dominic Thiem here, doesn't want to name them. Oh, but he does. It would give me a bit of a think. I would give me a bit of shame, but if they can sleep... Okay, so he's saying he wouldn't be able to live with himself if he's in a palace knowing all the other players are in a prison practically, is the way he makes it sound. If they can sleep soundly, then that's fine. I didn't like that Nadal and Thiem didn't say anything at all. At least Djokovic said something about, this is kind of unfair and looks kind of... looks bad. It's a bad look. Many people say one thing and do another. In a pandemic context in which everyone is asked for empathy and solidarity, the fact that the director of Australian Open, Craig Tiley Smiley, comes out to openly recognize that preferential treatment for leading players, and he whitewashes it, seems to me that they are laughing at us in our faces. If you only care about 3 players, set up an exhibition with them, but don't bring the rest of us. Wow. That's some serious burn material there. It's hard that we are here without open windows, requesting to have 5 minutes of fresh air, and then you see a video of Djokovic going out to a balcony bigger than my entire room. Okay, making a strong case, Guido Pella. This kills you physically and mentally. We already assume there's favorable treatment for the best players. When I leave the room, my only objective now is to not get injured. I give up on the competitive aspect. I can't compete on a high level going through this. I'll step on the court and try to do well and collect money that corresponds to me. But what makes me most angry is representing Argentina. Don't cry for me, Argentina. Is representing Argentina in these terrible conditions, because I know that I can't win matches for my country. And then we go to Victor Troitsky. If I knew, I wouldn't have come. If he knew what he was going to go through, he wouldn't come play here in Australia at all. Total chaos. Horror as far as everything is concerned. I'm locked up for 14 days and I can't leave my room. No training. Nothing. My Grand Slam is failing. I can't get ready for 5 sets in a room. All preparations are failing. 2 weeks of lying in bed. It is certain that I'll have to get back in shape for the next month and a half, which is serious. The level of fitness these guys are at, which Kyrgios obviously didn't hit because he's having all these knee issues early on, it's hard to maintain that. And you'd say, well, do a workout in your room, some of you might say. But it's not that simple. There's a lot of things you got to do, which it's going to be pretty tough to do it clogged up in that room. By the way, speaking of in the room, there was a story about Putintseva, my favorite player from Kazakhstan, feeding mice. There was mice in her room. So she's trapped with the mice. And take a look at the picture. It appears that she has the same foam roller that I keep in my tennis bag so that I can loosen up the fascia, the muscles. So I thought that was interesting. Finally, Riley Opelka. You might be confused. You know, you're watching all this, and you've heard, maybe you've, like me, you've heard stories about how in Australia it's very strict with the COVID policies. Hit the music. This is the last thing. We're getting out of here. Well, Riley Opelka says like he feels like an enemy there after he found out that the tennis players are allowed to come in while a lot of people from Australia, missing their families who were stuck abroad, still can't get into the country. I don't know, he doesn't say, but he makes it sound like some people maybe were out of the country at the start of COVID and still haven't been able to get back almost a full year later. If that's the case, you know, that sounds pretty horrible. Don't quote me on that, though. I'm not sure. But the point is, there's a lot of people who would like to get into Australia right now, plenty of them from Australia, born there, right? And they can't even get in. And Riley Opelka says if he would have known that, he wouldn't have come either, just because he kind of feels guilty that he gets to travel while people who actually live in that country are kept out of their homes and not able to travel back home. That's the gist of what he's saying here. Nobody here, talking about all the players quarantining, feel welcome, but it's too late. I've flown across the world. It'd be pointless for me to go home now 3 days before the Australian Open. I'm not going to go home after all this. I didn't realize how it didn't make sense for us to be in Australia in the first place till after I got here. It's never fun being somewhere you aren't welcome. I don't want to slam the tournament because they put in an unbelievable effort. But I think they said there are about 30,000 people right now that are trying to come back. And I'm like, geez, that's terrible. They can't even come home. I completely understand why we aren't appreciated here by some people. Had I known this coming in, I think every player might reconsider. If I had to guess, I don't know. Not with an intent to cause harm, but with an intent of respect. I didn't understand there were people who have family members who can't even come home. If I was an Australian citizen, born and raised here, love my country, I would be quite frustrated as well. I just didn't understand that until I came here, unfortunately. So, pretty aware from Riley Opelka there. I understand his point, and so sad for you if you are an Aussie right now kept out of your home country. That's all the time we have today. Thanks for joining us here at the Coffee Break Tennis Talk Show. We'll see you Monday to kick things off in style with some fresh matches under the belt after the Tom Brady victory in the Super Bowl on Sunday. See ya!